so much. Evidently, the slide coloration did not come out as we intended. I'm not trying to be suspicious about it. Thank you so much, Microsoft and everyone, for coming tonight and having me up here. We want to talk about some initiatives, do some introductions, take some questions from you. So I'm going to start driving through this. At any time during it, if you're truly passionate about a question, please raise your hand and we'll get to it. If not, save it till the end, because if we get to the end and there's no questions, I'm going to feel terrible about myself. And so feel free to be as interactive as you want. So my name is Justin Herman. I work for U.S. General Services and Administration in a new program called the Emerging Citizen Technology Program. And so what that is specifically is that I work with all agencies across the government, thousands of federal technologists, in order to introduce, mainstream, create resources, working groups, pilots, truly whatever is necessary to advance artificial intelligence for citizen services, virtual and augmented reality, and social technologies. Often when we think of the intersection and how citizens are accessing public services that are not completely dependent on websites themselves. And so one of the things, okay, we'll improvise here. One of the things, of course, that we work on, not talking about tonight, but for instance, is working to bring Microsoft HoloLens and augmented reality, introduce it to government agencies, and work to see, like, what are the business cases, what are the practical uses of this emerging technology, and how can they help solve the problems of government, not to replace things, but to augment and to basically create opportunities where it didn't exist. But maybe this will be a different meetup in which we talk about that, because today what we're going to talk about is our recently launched pilot that we announced, where we're working with about maybe 2 to 3 dozen agencies, and I'll find out exactly on Monday the formal number, but to work with Microsoft Cortana, Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, Microsoft Messenger chatbot, all the basically intelligent public personal assistants that you see in home devices and mobile devices, and start integrating public services into them. Does that sound of any great interest to anybody here, being able to access public services through voice commands? Because ultimately, yep, thank you, Scott in the back. See, he knows the game here. When we're talking, we got to keep this lively. And essentially is that, because what we recognize as well is that what's the little assistant that's on your desk and a little device or an app on your phone of today? This is also what's going to be fueling the self-driving cars of tomorrow. This is what's going to be filling the edge, because right now, of course, if you know government websites or public services, there's challenges we face in accessibility for persons with disabilities, providing multilingual services that aren't just an augmentation or a side effect of what we already have, but truly are even and equal services themselves for anybody who needs to access them. And again, not just going on your laptop, but making it a 24-hour, any day of the week, self-service operation that whenever and wherever you need accesses to the public services that you rely upon, you shall have those things. So when we talk about working truly government-wide, so just in the Emerging Citizen Technology Office, we cover and unite over 1,500 federal technologists together. And no one person is the same here. We have data scientists. We have social media managers. We have people who are the business managers. We have the people who are the coders. We bring diverse skill sets together and try to put them together in new ways that maybe the government hasn't done it before, to try to get new and better outcomes. And in fact, even one of the people, our favorite, Rob, is in the back here, Presidential Innovation Fellow. We even have some of them who's been greatly helpful with this project. So if you ever talk to him today, give him a huge shout out for that. So what are the type of things? So if we're bringing all these people together, what are we doing with it? Now, as any of you have ever worked with the federal government before, and if you have, I probably halfway have to apologize at first, because it can be difficult, because we can't just pull things off the shelf and use them. And there's very good reasons we don't just pull things off the shelf and use them, because they are public services. So what we do is we bring together people and we try to look at what makes it effective, transparent, and accessible. What are ways that we can make agencies and put performance analysis in their hands? Now, for instance, social technology. People said for a while government was behind in it. The US government is the single largest employer of social media managers in the world. But the difference is that what the technology, if it's designed for advertising companies, that might not have the same performance metrics or even the same use cases that a public service would need. Therefore, we had to create new public performance management resources and things to empower people to credibly use them. Records keeping. There's laws about that. It's like, I remember when we first introduced them, people said, well, you got to get on things like Periscope and stuff. But what we had to do is now evaluate, because one of the things is, and how do you make it more accessible? We have to ensure that if we're providing a service, that it is designed in such a way that it is accessible for all people. How many people have heard of 508 compliance before? See, it can't even stop there, because just because something is 508 compliant does not mean it's accessible. And so we really have to explore and embracing these new technologies, and some of what you've seen tonight is up to these standards. Once we've met this, then we truly can move forward on it. And just for more of the boring stuff, we'd have to adhere to things like the Records Act, Freedom of Information Act, Americans with Disabilities Act. So oftentimes when people complain about the minutiae of government, yes, acquisitions are terrible. Yes, there's some aspects that are terrible. But many of the things that are perceived as hurdles in embracing emerging technology are things that when you really think about it, those hurdles are there for a reason. But we're excited to come places like here today, because the more that we're able to share with people and talk about what those requirements and why they're there, the more that from the ground level we can work with people and small businesses and startups and to grow these fields together. All right, so that was a lot of talk. Now so not enough flash before the bang. So let's get into the bang itself. When we're talking about what kind of data exists that is at the hands of people to be able to use to fuel some of the technologies that in the approaches that you saw earlier. For instance, we have a repository, it's API generating of I think there's, well, right there at 7,000 when I took the screenshot a few months ago. There's over 11,000 on our way to 15,000 daily used social media and collaborative platforms by the federal government. That includes Socrata, GitHub, then Facebook, anything that really is a government presence that doesn't end in .gov or .mil. People don't realize that there's 15,000 daily active. But if you can imagine, citizens choose to go. The reason that we use those platforms often is because that's where citizens already are. That's where they're asking questions. That's where they're trying to find their news and get their resources. So to be able to really catalog that and to be able to look at how it's being used is very important. All right. Okay, we'll skip the next one. So another example, who's heard of analytics.usa.gov? Okay, you got to check it out. It's awesome. It's essentially real time. You're able to go in and it tracks analytics of most government websites in real time. I'm guessing when I did this screenshot, it was tax season, because as you notice in real time, people were using where's my refund. I hope you're seeing where I'm going here, is because whether it's a third-party site or whether it's a website, we have at our fingertips the entire citizen experience of how they're asking, and what they're getting out of as results when they're trying to integrate with public services. Of course, and how people have heard of data.gov. It's fantastic. Okay, so check it out. The repository, the links to all the open data sets in the federal government. We also have the digital search program in our office. What are people going on into the bar to search for? The end result, and the reason I go on this, is that right now, and for a while, we've been sitting on just the most voluminous source of data, public data that can be public if it's not already public, that basically maps out the entire citizen experience, and whether it's call centers, websites, social media, freaking GitHub, no matter what it is, we know what citizens are asking for, how they're asking it, what are the different ways they're trying to enter, what are the ways they succeed, what are the ways they fail. All of that's sitting there for the taking. And so we would talk about it, and that's when we really get into, we started doing workshops as far as like, what's the business case here? And this is actually one of the ones we had at Chief, just so, and if anyone thinks we only do this behind the doors of government agencies, I invite you to come anytime, because we're trying to do this out in the open as much as possible. So we start talking about, okay, what are those things in government, those challenges that we all know exist, but we haven't been able to meet it yet. And and a lot of people, when they talk about automation and they talk about AI, it's always about its role as a job killer and how we're replacing people with it. What we're still looking at right now is not replacing people, but empowering people to be able to tackle challenges, things that are everyday needs of citizens, everyday needs of the public services designed to meet them, that are not getting done. Because it's a tyranny of the amount of data and information available. And the challenge becomes, how do we make it actionable? How do we make it digestible? How do we take it merely from things that we're collecting and things that we can observe in snapshots and make it operational? That's the challenge. That's the sort of things that we've been working on. So that's why we put together the Emerging Citizen Technologies program, in part, is again, bring together agencies and start cranking away on this. Now, what came up for us was we thought we could, so I have this saying, may I live 1,000 years and never go to and talk on a panel about the promise of tomorrow, what we damn well should have delivered today. And so what we wanted to do, so we knew the challenges, we have the information, we did the workshops, sitting right there is the business case. Dozens of tangible business cases we can act on right now. So what we thought, a first thing, just to get going, to put blood in the water, skin in the game, however you want to call it, and basically declare that we want to become knowledgeable, we want to become partners in this, we want industry to know that this is available, because whether it's government providing the solution or us just opening up data, these are needs that exist right now and we must work together in order to achieve it. So an easy thing. Let's start plugging things into IPAs, Intelligent Personal Assistants, and see what happens. Let's go through a pilot program. And we're looking for this actually to wrap up by my birthday, but I say that next month. Everyone has something they're saying that we have to wrap it up for. But this is something that we want to be able to demo, because one of the, okay, this was a picture of Microsoft Cortana, which was supposed to be the money shop behind me, and then everyone, frame it. So let's just imagine that Cortana is up behind me right now. And so the idea was, again, that rapidly, and in fact, it would be before the next meetup of these, to be able to show and have to market new capabilities. Has anyone heard yet or read any news about the integration of public services and in things like Cortana and Amazon Alexa and Google Home and Voice and things like that? One of the challenges that we face is that it's so just the beginning. And in fact, when we're dealing and talking with people, the first thing everyone says is, well, you got to be doing this, or you got to be doing that more. So what we're doing, and we're trying to be smart about this, is just iterative development. Right now, there are very few, if no, federal government resources that empower agencies through looking at the accessibility, performance metrics, these things that are critical to investment in the government is not available to most government agencies at this point. So what we want to do is keep on releasing 1 to 2 month pilots. First, it's going to be read-only use of public data across a subsection, including Microsoft Cortana. Then what we do is we put together our findings, we issue next steps, then we can increasingly go in levels of complexity, but not because it's something we spent 6 months talking about on panels that we should do, and then we bite it off all at once. It's something we can take action on right now. It's achievable, and we're going to move forward on it. And actually, so I met with the Cortana team today, and it was particularly exciting because it's one thing just to have some of these services that, again, putting together simple call and response bots and things like that. But the level of services that Cortana actually has that brings so much to it, we kind of at some points would be like, whoa, 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 we got to slow down. Because what we're realizing is that while we, during these pilots, want government to have to build these ourselves, so we're knowledgeable about it, there's already resources that exist that are going to be able to make this so much easier and so much more meaningful. There's technology just sitting there waiting for the federal government, and we're going to be getting there step by step. Particularly as well as things that we are attracted to, and this was part of the demo you saw, is the multilingual services. And to be able to have multiple one back end for multiple things. We're trying to think of how can we tailor programs specifically through those devices, but half of the side is someone with a vision impairment. The other is somebody with a hearing impairment. But rather than being two separate programs, these are something where all is meaningfully managed on the back end, made actionable and digestible. Also in multilingual services, and so in a way, even the first pilot that we're talking about, we're already beyond that. And so it's a very exciting time, as you can imagine, on this. And a lot of what you saw tonight we'll be taking advantage of, increasing capacity. So what's next? So that makes sense, everything I just said, though, right? Does some of it sound great? Does this sound like a good thing? All right, so he's giving me the thumbs up right there. I appreciate that. Someone's going to get him a beer after this. What's nice about it? So like when I gave the amount of time originally I was thinking for this, I tried to pick, I said 2 months, but then that was just throwing something in the air because I was like, that's just fast enough to scare some people in government and just long enough to show that we're doing due process. But then we throw actually that approach out the window after Rob had a long session with me. And he's like, we got to make this more agile. So again, we're looking for a few weeks to get this out. And again, the end of this pilot is you're going to be using these services. They're going to be put to market. We're going to be seeing if this is making an impact in people's lives. Organizations like HHS to NASA to whomever, like I said, there are 30 agencies have asked to be part of this. But ultimately, if we get just a few for testing purposes, that's going to be very happy by me. And so, especially when we have the support that we have from organizations like Microsoft. I mean, when we work together, there's nothing that we can't achieve. Now, when we're talking about what's next, how many people have gone to like a hackathon, prizes, competitions, things like that? So this pilot, we're going to be doing ourselves. But the end result of this is that there's going to be more and more opportunities. And one of those mechanisms, in fact, one of my colleagues, Tammy, works on the Challenge.gov team, and I was told her husband was in the audience today. Okay, he might, oh, right there, there we go. Your wife is wonderful. Thank you so much. So yes, so this is just one of the mechanisms, and because it's not just going to be government doing this, it's not just going to be industry providing the solutions. We want to get people excited. We want people to see that vision and see how they can be part of it. Because again, we don't want to have the paradox of the present haunting us, where people are just bound by what they see now, when we are in a field that every day, if we took more than a month for this demo or this pilot, it would already be far obsolete by the time we even ended it. So we got to keep looking 3 steps ahead and pull ourselves there together. And again, that can only happen when we work together on this. And that's one of the reasons I'm so glad to come out here tonight. And hopefully everyone will keep an eye on this, because we're going to crank this out quick, but then there's no ending to where we can go on this. We're going to need your feedback. We would like, if you would like to participate in this, you have that opportunity to do so, and because we need feedback and testing along the way. That being said, it's such a pleasure for me to have talked to you tonight. I told you I would be brief in this and hopefully get some gears running on it. So is there any questions, actually? Yes? When you say participate in that, are you talking about some sort of open sourcing model here? Yes, so that's part of it. And we talked about this earlier. Now someone would be like, oh, I saw this at this one agency, or saw that at that agency. That's wonderful for them. There's a difference between developing in the open, though, and doing it a dozen agencies together. And you could follow this on GitHub, and you could follow the lessons learned and use it as you may, and you might not be able to do something with it today, but you know it's happening, and you know when you can inject and participate. So we're going to be doing this in the open. We're going to be doing this widespread. Again, what we try to represent is not the singular use in an agency, but the mainstreaming of this technology itself across public services. And that'll be something that's not just shared amongst the federal government, but will be pushed state and local and internationally. So hopefully by the time of your next meetup, wear 2 pairs of socks, because one of them are going to be knocked off. Or I'll be drinking in the back. one of the two. Any other questions? I see you've got one, maybe. No?
I was going to ask, could you give us like just 3 real-world examples of something that you can't do today that your solution, technology, knowledge
Yeah, I mean, I can give you an exact business case right now, because maybe you could do something better with it than we're trying to, is a lot of agencies, including our own, when we look at what citizens are asking and often can't find, it's not that they're not there. There's two bureaucracies that affect public services right now in digital government. One is the bureaucracy of government itself. Oftentimes, the program or service you're looking for is in an agency or sub-agency you do not know exists, which is a huge shame because it's not citizens when you are in trouble, when there is an emergency, when you are looking for something that you shouldn't have to be hunting for things that you own as taxpayers. The other bureaucracy itself is the one of technology itself. When we're spread across all of these platforms and it's like, well, do I pick up the phone and call? Do I email? Do I tweet? Oftentimes I don't even phone call, I just tweet horrible things and customer service responds to it. And right now, each one of those are completely separate chains. Now what we're looking at, and this starts with this pilot, is called the no wrong door approach. Because also something that we're working on is introducing AI augmentation into federal call centers. And the idea is that whether you call, email, tweet, do whatever, search in a search term, each is weighed equally, each is put into one backend that is then made operational and digestible. It's called the no wrong door approach, that no matter how you're accessing your services, no matter whether you have a hearing disability or vision impaired, whether you speak a different language, it all is weighed equally and it is all made operational in the same way. In order to get there, which is the inevitable future, is that it starts with bits and pieces and pilots like this to start opening up and operationalizing that data. What we're able to see, and actually I apologize to bounce back to your question, is that something like 70% of the questions that often an agency will get are the same 6 questions. Now those questions will change, but we're looking at a serious impact if we can just make these same questions and these same needs inescapably available to people so they don't have to hunt for it. You know what that does? That frees up the subject matter experts in government to do exactly what they are. Be the subject matter experts that citizens need when they need it, instead of being bogged down with the same repetitive 10 questions. So when we're introducing this, we're not chasing the tail of technology. Again, we did more work on the business cases than you'd like to think. But the idea, again, is that right there is that we see through automation and also making more accessible these services that we know people are going on because we own that data, we have it, is that what resources will that free up and what will that free up people to do? And essentially, that's a business case that any agency can employ, but we're gonna try to mix it up. So it's not just that. But right there, we already know this is gonna make a tremendous impact just in phase 1 of the pilot. You in the back of the room. Yeah. Well, I think I heard bits and pieces, kind of like the blank slides in my deck. Okay.
My question is more about, like, are you trying to make it as a voice assistant? Like, would that be a future thought process? Like, you introduce Cortana.
Yes.
Are you trying to introduce voice assistants?
Yes. And not just that. Basically, we're trying to look, how are people, and not just public services, how are people around the country accessing things, accessing information? Now, when we talk about questions and responses, certainly that's the easiest part. But what happens phase 2, phase 3, we can start looking at personalization of services, things, where is my veterans benefits? Where's my tax return? Just what you saw up there. But in order to get to that point, we of course have to start building our capabilities, get agencies part of the program, and that will be the inevitable near-term future. Yes?
How are the other agencies responding to this, especially because you guys have such a tight timeline?
Overwhelming. absolutely overwhelming. In my heart of hearts and dreams of dreams, I was hoping for 6 agencies. I was not knocking on the doors. I was calling friends at other agencies, being like, we got to do this. Let's get the band back together. You know, there's obviously people in government that, you know, work together really interagency to do this. And now I think we've got 30 agencies responding, probably more since I've been talking here. And at first it's like, okay, let's limit it. And then I was like, no, actually let's not limit it. And let's just open it the hell up. And because ultimately, if 30 agencies or programs go forward on it and only 6 make it through, that's still a lesson learned. Because ultimately, a lot of these skills we could achieve over the weekend with 2 pizzas and a 6-pack working together on it. But it's the process itself and instilling and making sure the resources and the foundations exist for all agencies to participate. That is just as much of a win as whatever we get out of it, though we do, of course, want great things out of it. And hopefully working with teams like Microsoft, you're going to see that very quickly. All right, any other questions? See, these are getting great. Anything spicy? No? All right, well, thank you so much, everybody. I think my contact info is up here if you have any questions. And again, we're going to try to do this frighteningly fast.
So thank you so much for joining us today. We have a little bit of networking afterwards.